going to do the radish. So the radish is by number 19. Radish, I don't think I have one here. Wait, yes I do. The radish is red on the bottom and green on top. And the difference in painting this one is going to be that, sure, we can do the wet on wet within the leaves because they kind of blend together, or within the base, within the root, because those colors kind of blend together. But we want a very clear distinction between the red part and the green part. So if the green was wet and then we painted the red and that was wet too, they would bleed together. So we're going to try to separate those two parts out. So we don't, actually, let's go ahead and paint the green leaves of the radish because we already have some greens mixed up. And I'm going to go for kind of a similar mixture. A lot of the greens in the vegetables that we eat are quite close in color. But as long as we're using these two greens, they are going to be slightly different each time. So it's not going to get boring to keep using them because we're mixing them together and they'll always be a little bit different. So I am going to my radish greens and I am going to paint them with my light green. Just the same process, light green, and then I think this time I will add a little bit less of the dark green because spinach is very dark green and I don't think the radish greens are quite as dark as that. And don't beat yourself up if you paint outside the lines. Oh, I thought of a good analogy. I feel like a lot of the workshops that I teach are more like how to get people to try art and not be unnecessarily hard on themselves and recognize when they have unrealistic expectations and that they're actually doing a really great job. And when I was thinking of painting inside the lines or being perfect, I was thinking of, actually, I went to a park birthday yesterday. We had a picnic in the park and I was writing the person's name on the envelope. And I imagined the difference between a typed font of your name on an envelope versus your good friend handwriting your name. Like, which is more perfectly written? Like the one that's typed and printed for sure, but you want the handwritten name on the envelope. Like that's what gives you the warm fuzzies. So that's what we're going for. We're not going for perfection. If we wanted perfection, we'd be taking photographs. We're doing like a stylistic painting where the human touch is a really big part of it. Actually, for these paintings, and not just because I hate drawing, but also for the style, I didn't sketch first. I went straight to the ink because when you go straight to the ink, for one, it's really good for combating perfectionist tendencies because there's no going back. But it also it creates kind of wonky shapes that are imperfect in a pleasant way. So you can really utilize the imperfection of the watercolors and just of the human hand. And my radish greens are just about dry, so I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up some red so I can do the bottom of the radish. And I'm going to do that the same way that we were mixing colors before. I'm going to use the Summer Sun Red and maybe just a touch of the pumpkin. The Summer Sun Red looks a lot like a radish color already to me. Oh no, it's a little bit too pink. So the way that you combat that too pinkness is to add some yellowness, which is the pumpkin color. And if you don't, knowing things about like color theory and how to mix colors is really helpful. But you can always Google whatever it is. If you can't remember how to mix black, just Google it. Or ask me if you're wondering right now and think you will remember.
Also, is it normal for the paper to puff up?
Ooh, yes, it is. Good point. While it is drying, and even when it seems pretty dry, the water will buckle and bend, and then as when it's completely dry, like tomorrow, then it will go back to being flat or mostly flat.
Are these watercolor paints, are they additive, kind of like other, like maybe let's say like acrylics or oils, that if you mix their colors together, then you end up with a different color?
Yes, absolutely. All of the same principles would apply. The only real difference between mixing colors in watercolors versus say acrylics is that in watercolors there is no white. The white is the paper. So if you had red paint and you wanted a pink heart, you would just add a lot of water to your red so it was very thin. And then when you put it on your paper, the white would show through. And so that would make it pink. All right, I'm going to move on to my radish root. Beautiful. I would say that the hardest thing about painting, other than just like general motor control of your hand, is the mixing colors part. And I'd say it could also get frustrating. So if you are mixing a color and it's not turning out like you want, maybe research it a little bit, and someone else, someone else's will have ideas of what colors to mix to get it. But just keep at it. Just keep trying different things. I was just mixing this red color, and I thought that I could use just the summer sun and the pumpkin, but it wasn't getting quite dark enough. So I ended up using a little bit green in with the red, which isn't very intuitive to know what to do. But if you add a very different color, like an opposite color, it gets more like brown or black. And when I wanted something to get darker, that made sense. So I added a green color to the red. And to paint the radish base, I painted the whole thing with one layer. And then whenever you dip your paintbrush back in your paint and touch it to your painting surface again, it becomes, can you see this? Yeah. It becomes concentrated in that area. So I had this idea that the bulbous part of the radish was going to be paler than the root part of the radish. So I painted the whole thing, and then I just kept adding more paint to the tip of the root. And it doesn't look super different right now, but when it dries, you should be able to tell that there's more color there.